I spent the entire night tossing and turning, barely managing to fall asleep around 4 in the morning. I hadn't slept for long when, at 8 sharp, my phone started ringing like a siren. My female boss's voice exploded in my ear like a string of firecrackers. "What? Do you have any idea what time it is? And you're still not at work?" I hurried to explain. "Sister too. My mom had an episode in the middle of the night. I took her to the hospital. I'm waiting for her IV to finish. Then I'll come right away. There are 2 employees on shift this morning. And it's usually slow at this hour. So it should be fine." I didn't even get to finish before the shouting cut me off. "Whether it's fine or not is none of your concern. If your name is on the schedule, then you are required to be here on time. You're a manager. Set an example instead of dragging your mother out as an excuse every single time. Get your body over here immediately. And one more thing. Your attendance bonus for this month is completely cancelled. Your performance bonus too. Let that be a lesson." Beep, beep, beep. I stared at the disconnected call for a few seconds, then laughed quietly. Working strictly by my scheduled shift, fine. Maybe that would actually make things lighter. When I arrived at the tea house, Man Y was already seated arrogantly at the tea table, her face dark and tense, as if the mere sight of me offended her. "Look at the time. You're a manager, and you stroll in this late. Do you think you look like someone setting an example? The 2 employees outside are running themselves ragged, and you've been hiding away. Where's your sense of responsibility? Don't even open your mouth to say you had something to deal with. Everyone has problems. Are you some kind of priceless treasure? Once you're working, work comes first. Everything follows the rules." Before I could say a word, she slammed the schedule down onto the table. The teacups rattled. "Don't say I'm accusing you unfairly. Look for yourself. Your name is on the morning shift today, isn't it? And who made this schedule?" You did. You arranged it, yet you're the first to break it. I heard from Tiu Tuyet. This isn't the first time you've done this. Hứa Minh Vi, I trusted you to manage this store. And this is how you repay me?" I glanced toward Tiu Tuyet at the mention of her name. Duong Tuyet, a tea-brewing staff member I had reprimanded just yesterday for leaving tables filthy, raised her eyebrows slightly. The corners of her lips curved in an undisguised sneer. She wasn't even pretending to hide her enjoyment of the spectacle. I still chose to explain the scheduling issue clearly. "Sister too. It's true that my name is on today's schedule. But I've covered all my shifts these past few days. Today there was an emergency. And I did inform." Before I could finish, she cut in sharply. "No excuses. Rules are rules. No one gets special treatment." "Enough," Man Y said, waving her hand as if granting mercy. "I don't want to hear more. For today, your attendance bonus is definitely gone. And since this month's performance is already down, your bonus will be cut in half. On top of that, you're a manager who dared to be absent without permission. This is a serious violation. I won't pursue it further. Consider that leniency. A fine of 3,000 yuan. Let it serve as a warning to the entire store." I stared at her for a few seconds, then smiled. My voice was light, almost emotionless. My base salary was already the same as an ordinary employee's. Now with half my bonus gone and an extra 3,000 yuan deducted, I'd be taking home less than 2,000 this month. And my mother's physical therapy alone cost more than that every single month. Man Y picked up her bag casually. "That's your problem. I have no responsibility to shoulder anyone else's family burdens." She didn't spare me a single glance before clicking her high heels and walking straight out. Duong Tuyet snorted softly, hugged her phone, and slipped into a corner to scroll through social media as if nothing had happened. Only Lam Wei looked at me with worry in her eyes. She was a trainee I had personally mentored. And she was also the one who had secretly tipped me off earlier that Man Y was in a rage. I patted her hand gently, signaling that it was fine. Man Y knew my family situation. She knew exactly how badly I needed money, and she always used that to keep me under her thumb. But if I were that easy to control, I wouldn't be Hứa Minh Vi. The woman who had taken a tea house on the brink of bankruptcy and turned it into a stable business with over 300,000 yuan in monthly revenue within just 3 years. Duong Tuyet kept scrolling in the shadows, occasionally sneaking glances at me. I knew she was wondering why I was still calmly sipping tea. Why I wasn't reacting at all. This wasn't the first time Man Y had lashed out at me. And every time before, I let it pass. Once she left, I simply went back to work as if nothing had happened. The tea house was busiest in the afternoon and evening. Mornings were always slow. Normally, I used this quiet time to train employees in tea techniques, sharing everything I knew. But not today. I didn't feel like it anymore. At 3 in the afternoon, the evening shift arrived, and customers gradually began to fill the place. I worked as usual, no anger, no sulking, no negligence. Until the clock hit exactly 5. I set everything down, picked up my bag, and walked straight to the time clock. I pressed my index finger against the scanner. Clock out successful, the machine announced clearly. Under everyone's stunned gazes, I left work on time, for the first time ever, without staying a single extra second. I bought my mother a bowl of hot porridge from outside the hospital before going in. The doctor said that last night's fall hadn't caused any serious damage. Her lumbar spine was recovering well. Surgery wouldn't be necessary. Hearing that, my entire body felt light. For the first time in years, without working overtime, I broke routine and had dinner with my mother. A simple meal, but inexplicably warm. That morning, when Man Y called, her shrill voice had carried clearly through the room. My mother had heard everything. Now, seeing me home early, she could guess what had happened. She kept stroking my cheek, her voice full of guilt. My good daughter, you've suffered so much. It's all because I'm dragging you down. I squeezed her hand and shook my head gently. Don't say that, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. After dinner, I stepped outside the hospital for a walk, breathing in the fresh air. My chest finally felt unburdened. For the first time in a long while, my mind felt truly at ease. Then, at 8 in the evening, my phone rang again, like a death knell. Hứa Minh Vi, where did you run off to now? The shop is packed, and there are only 3 people on duty. Everyone spinning in circles. A customer in one of the private rooms asked for hot water earlier. And no one responded for ages. Is this how you manage? I replied calmly. Our tea house has 3 private rooms. During peak hours, they're usually full, plus walk-in customers in the main area. If there are only 3 employees on the evening shift, it's definitely overloaded. You know there aren't enough people, and you still don't rush over here? Is something wrong with your head? Man Y was already in her 50s, but she took excellent care of herself. At first glance, no one could guess her real age. She loved wearing dark silk kipaos, draped with matching shawls. Her face always carried a mild, gentle smile, her demeanor calm and refined. Anyone meeting her for the first time would inevitably sigh, such spring breeze elegance. Only those who had stayed close to her knew the truth. Behind that polished, graceful mask was calculation down to the last coin, the last minute. At this moment, that mask finally fell. Her voice on the phone suddenly turned hysterical, stripped of every trace of the composure she usually displayed. Faced with that irrational frenzy, I spoke calmly. My voice wasn't loud, but every word was clear, steady, ringing like a warning bell. Sister 2, I'm not on the schedule tonight. There was silence on the other end for several seconds. Then came the sharp crash of porcelain shattering. What do you mean by that? Are you trying to defy me? I only docked a bit of your bonus and you're already acting like this? Fine, very fine. You really don't know who you are anymore. Remember this well. No one is indispensable. The earth keeps spinning without anyone. Don't think you're the center of the universe. Bang. The call ended with an angry slam. I remained calm from beginning to end. I knew better than anyone that the shop was perpetually understaffed, especially in recent years. With revenue soaring and customers flooding in, evenings being the worst, but Man Y stubbornly refused to hire more people. simply because she didn't want to increase costs. So I took it all on myself. I became the tea house's permanent laborer. No distinction between early or late shifts. No days off. Working from 8 in the morning until 11 at night. My name on the schedule was purely symbolic. I never thought it was hard. I never complained. I loved tea. I always believed that if people trusted me with the tea house, I would give it everything I had, as if it were my own business. They grew accustomed to my constant presence, accustomed to me carrying everything on my shoulders. And precisely because they had grown so used to that silent sacrifice. Today, I personally put an end to it. And this was only the beginning. I rented a folding bed in the hospital corridor and lay down for the night. It had been so long since I'd gone to sleep this early, it felt strangely unfamiliar. In the past, I often had to entertain clients at night, drinking tea high in caffeine. My sleep quality was always terrible. I would get off work at 11 or midnight, my mind still sharp as if it were daytime, lying awake for hours. No matter how many years I'd been drinking tea, no matter how deeply the taste had seeped into my blood, my body never became immune to caffeine. The result was chronic sleep deprivation. Dark circles under my eyes that no expensive concealer could hide. My menstrual cycle was a mess. My skin was sallow, dull, rough, nothing like that of a woman in her 20s. And even after just a few hours of shallow sleep, I still had to get up at 8 to open the shop before everyone else. The truth was, the tea house didn't need to open that early, but to Man Y seemed physically uncomfortable whenever she saw me resting. She insisted I open the doors exactly at 8. Once open, I had to lay out every sterilized tea set, inspect each tea room, boil water, clean thoroughly, making sure everything was perfect before welcoming guests. For years, I did this day after day, without missing a single morning. But today, I didn't want to anymore. I opened the schedule and checked. Tomorrow, I was on the evening shift. That meant I could sleep straight through until 2:30 in the afternoon. I couldn't hide my joy. Lying on that narrow folding bed, my head on a thin pillow, I felt an unexpected happiness, a luxury I hadn't realized I'd been missing. I closed my eyes, peace swelling in my chest. And of course, I didn't forget. To protect this precious sleep, I switched my phone to silent mode. I slept all the way until 2 in the afternoon. Stretching deeply, a refreshing sensation spread through my entire body. I heard that nurses had passed by a few times, but seeing how soundly I slept, they didn't have the heart to wake me. I picked up my phone. As expected, the screen was filled with missed calls and unread messages. The number, 99, jumped out immediately. Calls from Tan Shuat were stacked so densely that just looking at them made to Man Y's panic obvious. I scrolled through the messages leisurely. At first, they were accusations. Why hadn't I arrived to open the shop yet? Then came the insults. You didn't take the tea sets out of the sterilization cabinet first. Now customers are sitting there with no tea. Then frantic questions. Where's the aged tea that President Wong ordered? What kind of tea did President Lee consign? What does he mean by a separate personal tea set? Finally, complete loss of control. Hứa Minh Vi, what exactly are you trying to do? What do you mean by this? Are you deliberately opposing me? Don't think this kind of behavior can threaten me. If you don't want to work anymore, just say it outright. Through the phone screen, I could almost picture the battlefield like chaos inside the tea house. I wasn't in a hurry. I calmly got out of bed, brushed my teeth, changed clothes. Then, exactly at 3 o'clock, I pressed my finger to the time clock. Clock in successful. Not a minute early, not a second late. The tea house was completely empty. Shelves were in disarray. The storage room door was wide open. Everything lay exposed before me, a vivid testament to a disastrous reception. Lam Wei was kneeling on the floor, cleaning up spilled tea leaves, glancing at me repeatedly with her eyes as she worked. The moment Man Y saw me, she snorted coldly, turned on her heel, and strode into a small VIP room, signaling for me to follow. Hứa Minh Vi, she said sternly. I know you have opinions about me. But no matter how small a tea house is, it needs rules. Only rules allow long-term growth. And your behavior now clearly disqualifies you as a manager. She looked at me with a grave expression, speaking as if for the collective good. As the owner, I can't accept someone like you continuing in a managerial position. Organize all the customer information. Conduct a full inventory of stock. And she cleared her throat lightly, feigning awkwardness, though her tone remained steel-hard. All supplier channels you've handled. Make them clear as well. Then hand everything over to Duong Tuyet. If you don't want to do this job, someone else will gladly take the opportunity. Her head tilted slightly as she delivered the final line. Voice lowered, sarcasm unmistakable. Don't think that just because you've been a manager for a few years you're important. Without this tea house, you're nothing. I laughed softly and nodded. I understood exactly what she wanted. What she wanted to seize was my expertise. The VIP client network I had painstakingly built. The high-quality supplier channels I'd kept close to my chest for years. I said nothing. I calmly stood up and walked straight to the counter. Turning on the computer, I opened a secure folder. Inside were complete customer profiles, tea preferences, favored aromas, even custom-made personal tea sets for each individual. Line by line, category by category. All of it was my life's work over many years. And it was the one thing Man Y could never truly replace. More importantly, that folder also contained information on dozens of tea-producing factories I had personally visited over the years. Those were my supply chains, my trade secrets, the flesh and blood I had poured into this career. And they were exactly what Man Y coveted most. But if she thought that simply possessing this information would allow her to run the tea house smoothly, I was sorry. That was far too naive. I packaged all the data and handed it over to Duong Tuyet. I even sat down carefully, patiently explaining every symbol, every inventory process. Duong Tuyet slouched in her chair, face brimming with arrogance, as if she were already seated on a throne. She curled her lips and called out to me. Little Wah, she said deliberately, her tone condescending. No need to explain this stuff. Anyone knows how to do it. You need to understand the times. Going against the owner? You've cut off your own way out. She lifted her chin. Open your eyes and look carefully. Who's in charge of the tea house now? Whether you stay or leave, one word from me settles it. What are you still standing around for? Go clean. Don't keep that ugly face in front of me. She pointed straight at my nose. Smug. Wake up. I'm the store manager now. You're just a minor tea artisan. I smiled, nodded, and bowed politely. Then I immediately picked up a broom, slipped past her, and hurried toward the tea rooms, looking exceptionally eager. There was only one thought in my head. Oh my God, this is paradise. Just cleaning and brewing tea. No piles of tedious responsibilities like before. What a blessing. In the days that followed, eager to prove her worth, Duong Tuyet launched a series of dramatic reforms. She proposed increasing walk-in traffic, rolling out a 9 yuan and 90 fen tea combo. Seeing empty space in the shop, she casually displayed rows of bracelets and mini teacups. She even brought in cheap glass tea sets. At a glance, it was obvious the bracelets were charity trinkets sold on the street. And the cups looked like night market junk, 30 yuan per set. Dewa knockoffs. To cut costs further, she lowered the tea snack standards without hesitation, buying piles of cheap candied fruit, sunflower seeds, and pumpkin seeds from wholesale markets and placing them on the tea tables. Ironically, it seemed to work. Lines began forming outside the tea house. Customers came and went non-stop. Duong Tuyet was secretly delighted. She spent her days meticulously made up, strutting back and forth in front of me, eyes lifted so high her chin nearly touched the ceiling, like a peacock finally released from its cage. Man Y showered her with praise and even made a pointed remark about me. Some people really think they're indispensable. But that seat, anyone can sit in it. Don't think you can't be replaced. I didn't respond. I didn't care. I simply enjoyed my rare leisure. I arrived on time every day, left on time, did only what fell within my responsibilities. After a while, looking in the mirror, I was surprised to find my skin actually looked better. I nodded to myself in satisfaction. Life passed quietly, wrapped in a rare sense of peace. Until President Fuang returned. President Fuang was the highest tier VIP of the tea house. She drank the most expensive tea, used the most luxurious tea sets, and recharged her membership with astonishing sums. Others liked discussing business over alcohol. President Fuang preferred the tea table. As long as she was present, the largest VIP room in the tea house was always reserved exclusively for her. Recently, President Fuang had been away on a long business trip. Today was her first day back. In the past, every single visit of hers had been personally handled by me. This time was no exception. The moment she stepped into the tea house, she asked directly, "Where's Min Vi? Have her brew tea for me." But that day, I was on the morning shift, and I had clocked out early. Exactly on time. Knowing full well that I wouldn't be coming back. To Man Y was, of course, not foolish enough to let Duong Tuyet step in. Instead, she personally picked up the tea set and entered the VIP room, intending to receive the guest herself. According to Lam Wei, when To Man Y walked in, she deliberately put on a courteous front and said with pointed meaning, "President Fuang, Hua Min Vi is now just a minor tea brewer. She's already been demoted in front of the store manager. Letting her receive a guest like you would clearly be beneath your status. I'm the owner, today. It's more fitting for me to brew tea for you personally." President Fuang, who always carried herself with gentle courtesy, suddenly darkened in expression. She lifted her head and replied calmly, "I want Min Vi to brew tea, not because she's a manager, but because I consider her a friend." The words were light as a breeze, yet they struck like a slap from the heavens. To Man Y's face instantly went pale, but she had nothing to argue back. She swallowed the bitterness and continued playing the role of the professional host. While brewing tea, the smile on her face was stiff and artificial, her lips smiling, her eyes completely cold. President Fuang remained polite. She continued conversing as usual, discussing business as she always had, without exposing anything. And precisely because of that, everyone understood. Some things are not decided by titles. Only I knew that President Fuang had originally come that day to discuss a premium gift tea set called Gazing at the Mountains. It was a ceremonial tea project I had poured my heart into since the beginning of the year, from packaging design to ingredient selection. Everything had been done personally by me. Inside was authentic Da Hong Pao, picked from mother trees on Mount Wuyi, a rare, top-tier grade, roasted and refined using traditional handcrafted methods, valued at tens of millions of yuan per liang. Because production was extremely limited, the number of boxes was equally scarce. President Fuang was the very first customer for this high-end tea line. She had pre-ordered the entire batch. Total value, over 1 million yuan. She had come that day to pay the deposit. But she didn't say a word. I knew she understood. She could see clearly who created value, and who was merely sitting back, reaping the rewards. She was wise enough to preserve everyone's dignity, and smart enough to withdraw at the right moment. That batch of tea was still in my hands, and I no longer had any intention of delivering it to this tea house. Because President Fuang had preserved face that day, To Man Y mistakenly believed that my presence or absence made no difference. In her eyes, my value had already dropped to nearly zero. And then she issued her ultimatum. Hua Min Vi, your recent behavior has caused serious harm to the interests of the tea house. You're lazy, idle, and completely unacceptable to any business. I hereby officially announce, you're fired. Get lost, go wherever you want, do whatever you want, just don't let me see you again. The excitement on To Man Y's face was impossible to hide. Her voice grew faster and faster, barely containing her glee. I understood. From the very first time she cut my attendance bonus, I already knew that firing me was her ultimate goal. Back then, when she came looking for me, the tea house was drowning in losses, half a year behind on rent. Desperate for rescue, she offered me an extremely attractive commission, 30% of revenue. Thanks to my efforts, within a year, the tea house turned a profit. But once the crisis passed, she grew stingy. She quietly adjusted the share from 30% down to 10%. Even at 10%, with rising revenue, my income was still substantial. So she started calculating again. One day, Project A didn't count. The next, Category B fell outside the scope. After endless recalculations, what I actually received was only 3%. Now, even that 3%, she no longer wanted to share. Because in her mind, this was her tea house. I was just an employee. Why should I get a share? She couldn't tolerate someone beneath her earning profit alongside her. She wanted every cent for herself. Facing her contemptuous gaze and the smug curl of her lips, I simply nodded calmly. Fine, but before I leave, please settle my commission for the first half of the year. I hit her weak spot. To Man Y immediately raised her voice. Commission? You caused such serious losses to the tea house and you still have the nerve to ask for money? Are you joking? I'm telling you, not a single cent. Out of consideration for our years of cooperation, I'll pay your base salary for this month. Nothing more. You'd better take the money and get out. Very well. At that exact moment, a heavy burden lifted from my heart. Perfect. Now, President Fuang's million-yuan order. I could take it and leave without the slightest guilt. I turned to go. But to Man Y's voice rang out behind me. Wait, sign this first. I turned back and took the paper from her hand. Title: Non-compete agreement. Her eyes were arrogant, her tone commanding. Once you leave, you are not allowed to open your own tea house. You're not allowed to work for any other tea business. And you are absolutely forbidden from contacting any customers or partners associated with this tea house. I need to protect my interests. She didn't want to share profits, I understood that. But she also knew very well what I was capable of. If I joined any other brand, I would instantly become her biggest competitor. I smiled bitterly. Tea wasn't just my profession. It was my life. The only thing I had ever devoted my entire heart to protecting and developing. And now she wanted me to abandon it all. To start over in a completely unfamiliar field. Signing this agreement was no different from severing my own lifeline. I looked her straight in the eyes and said calmly, "This agreement is unfair." To Man Y narrowed her eyes, sharp as blades. "What did you say? Fairness? Since when has this world ever been fair? Everything you have today, I gave you. Without this tea house, you are nothing. Now I'm just taking back what belongs to me. That's fairness, isn't it?" She lifted her teacup, gently blew aside the floating leaves. Her voice cold and even. "You'd better behave and sign properly. Otherwise, I can't guarantee you'll leave here in one piece." She tilted her chin toward the door. There stood a tall, muscular man with arms crossed, eyes icy, his shirt stretched tight over bulging biceps, ready to strike at any moment. "You know," she added casually, "my younger brother has some mental issues. And once he drinks, he tends to get violent. If you anger him, a broken leg would be the least of your worries." She smiled faintly, as if enjoying a good show. I looked at her, my heart frozen solid. I wasn't afraid. Just disgusted. I picked up the pen, took a quiet breath, and slowly, stroke by stroke, signed my name. Afterward, I set the pen down without a word, turned around, and walked straight out. Before I even made it home, To Man Y had already launched her next move. She posted everywhere, group chats, her personal page, publicly declaring that she was blacklisting me. Her words were vicious, accusing me of ingratitude and betrayal. She openly warned industry peers, sending messages to all partners and contacts. Hứa Minh Vi is a despicable, untrustworthy person. From today onward, she has been blacklisted by me. To Man Y, if she exists. I don't. If I exist, She doesn't. Anyone who dares cooperate with Hứa Minh Vi is opposing me. I will cut off all cooperation with anyone who sides with her. I looked at the words on my screen and couldn't help but laugh. It seemed I had placed her too high in my own mind. To the point that she truly believed she was the one who decided status in the world of tea. I didn't bother responding to that so-called ban. Instead, I poured all my energy into one single thing. Finding a location. Yes. I was going to open my own tea house. In fact, during all the years I worked at the old tea house, quite a few clients had hinted that they wanted to invest in me. But once they found out I wasn't the owner, they immediately withdrew their offers. Now that they knew I was finally standing on my own, those same people came looking for me one after another. When it came to business, everyone was straightforward. "We're not investing in you out of sympathy," they said. "We're investing because we trust the strength of Hứa Minh Vi. You're someone we believe will never lose us money." Among all the investments, the largest one, of course, came from Phuong Tong. The order worth over 1 million tael. She no longer wanted the tea. Instead, she converted the entire amount directly into an investment in my new tea house. After signing the contract, Phuong Tong smiled brightly. "This is the lowest risk deal I've ever made," she said cheerfully. "No need to get involved. No need to worry. I just sit back and collect dividends every year. Life doesn't get better than this." I named my tea house V Minh Hien. What followed was a whirlwind of days filled with design work and construction. I was so busy I could barely breathe, but every now and then, Lam Wei would tell me what was happening over at Man Ngui's place. According to her, that side had turned into complete chaos. Ever since the 99 yuan tea combo was launched, the tea house's high-end image had completely collapsed. High-level clients began disappearing one after another. Some would walk up to the entrance, see the crowd packed inside like a wholesale market, and immediately turn around, escorting their guests to other tea houses instead. There was no need to think too hard about it. Daily revenue plummeted straight down. Duong Tuyet was so panicked that she could barely speak clearly, her face pale as paper. She came up with a new, brilliant plan to save the situation, expanding services. First, she added savory food. Then she converted an entire tea room into a mahjong parlor, dragging in tables and chairs, even setting up several mahjong tables like a roadside entertainment den. A high-end tea house that once smelled of refined tea leaves had now become a messy entertainment hall. There was no tea fragrance left, only the smell of grease and the clatter of tiles. Even worse, Duong Tuyet had never been a meticulous person to begin with. When she worked with me before, I constantly had to remind her about hygiene. Now that she was in charge, she became completely careless. I heard that once, a VIP customer discovered mouse droppings inside the teapot, a dark lump floating in the tea. The customer nearly vomited in the restroom before immediately calling the police. That very day, authorities raided the place, conducted a full inspection, and shut the tea house down for an entire week. At first, Man Ngui tried to keep up appearances, acting as if nothing had happened. But when she saw the end-of-month revenue report, she completely lost it. That was when my phone started ringing non-stop. "Hứa Minh Vi, did you do something behind my back?" she demanded. "Why are there so few orders this month? The revenue isn't even half of what it used to be. What did you do? Are you sabotaging me?" At the time, I was selecting tea leaves for my new store. I calmly took a sip of water, browsed through samples, and replied casually, "If business isn't going well, you should look at yourself first. I resigned a long time ago. What tricks do you think I could still pull?" On the other end, Man Ngui took several deep breaths, clearly trying to suppress an explosion of rage. Finally, her voice hissed through clenched teeth. "Hứa Minh Vi, come back. I'll make you store manager again. We'll go back to a 30% split like before. I'll pay you all the wages I owed. And I'll even increase your salary by another 50%. Don't push your luck. This is the greatest goodwill I can offer." I laughed, my lips curving slightly. "Sorry," I said lightly. A good horse never turns back to graze on old grass. Thank you for the offer. Click. I hung up without hesitation, feeling an indescribable sense of satisfaction. V Minh Hien had just finished construction. The grand opening was approaching. VIP guests were already making reservations. Investments were secured. I was busy preparing for my future. Why would I have time to care about old, rotten messes? On opening day, guests poured in endlessly. Congratulations echoed throughout the hall. I wore a light blue tea robe, greeting guests while coordinating staff. I was so busy I could barely keep up, yet my heart felt incredibly light. The new employees were sharp and energetic, weaving through the crowd, providing service with grace and efficiency. In the midst of the lively atmosphere, I suddenly spotted an uninvited guest. To Man Y. She was still wearing her familiar kipao, but today, the composed smile she usually wore was gone. In its place burned a look of intense jealousy. Her eyes swept across the room as if they were about to shoot flames. She stormed straight toward me, pointed a finger at my face, and nearly screamed. Very good. No wonder you refused to come back. So you opened your own place. Did you forget what you promised me? You weren't allowed to open a tea house. Weren't allowed to change jobs. Weren't allowed to use my clients or resources. So what exactly do you think you're doing now? She lifted her chin in contempt, abandoning all pretense of civility, spewing a stream of filthy insults. Ungrateful traitor. Then she spun around in the middle of the lobby, her eyes locking onto familiar faces in the crowd. VIP clients who used to frequent the old tea house. Seeing them here, her face turned pale with fury. She pointed at them one by one, almost shouting. Didn't you see what I posted in the group? I made it clear, if you have her, you don't have me. Showing up here means you're openly opposing me, right? At that moment, Phuong Tong calmly stepped out from the crowd. She stood facing to Man Y, her demeanor composed, her voice steady yet powerful. Yes, she said evenly, didn't you say it yourself? Cooperating with her means opposing you. I've already made my choice. I choose Hứa Minh Vi. If I have her, I don't have you, so now I'm cooperating with her. And I have nothing to do with you anymore. The words struck like a bolt of lightning. To Man Y froze on the spot, eyes wide with shock. What followed was humiliation, shame, and rage boiling over all at once. She couldn't believe it. Someone had dared to turn her own words against her. Her face flushed crimson, as red as a ripe persimmon. She stood there, completely defeated. She completely lost control, screaming a stream of shrill, venomous accusations. You chose her? Her? She shrieked. What is she, anyway? Just a tea picker from a factory. A laborer working under me. Without me, what clients would she have? How would she even know people like you? I'm the owner. She's nothing but a lowly employee. And you dare choose her over me? You must all be out of your minds. Phuong Tong smiled and replied slowly, calmly. I'm sorry, but let me correct one thing. Without her, I would never have known you at all. To Man Y froze again. She still hadn't finished her tirade, but the guests had already begun to lose their patience. A man frowned and spoke coldly. Who are you, exactly? Tea house owners are everywhere. Why would anyone know you? 10 years ago, I was already drinking tea with Director Hua when she was still working at the tea factory. Where were you back then? A woman clicked her tongue. She just barges in here screaming like this, acting as if she's some kind of queen. Another guest said irritably. If you're here to drink tea, get in line properly at the back. If not, please leave immediately. Don't stand here taking up space and ruining everyone else's celebration. A younger man chimed in jokingly. All right, everyone calm down. It's opening day. Let's just treat her as someone lighting firecrackers to bring luck to Director Hua. The crowd burst into laughter, the sound echoing throughout the hall. To Man Y's face turned alternately pale and red. She stood rigidly in place, beaten down again and again by both words and reality. Only then did she finally understand. The old tea house hadn't thrived because she was the owner. It had thrived because I was the one carrying everything behind the scenes. Clients came because of me. The premium tea came from me. The service and reputation were all built by me. She had only been standing on the signboard, mistaking the entire ship as her own. Still unwilling to accept it, she pulled out the non-compete agreement I had been forced to sign on the day I was driven out. Hứa Minh Vi, you signed this contract yourself. Opening your own tea house is a violation. I will sue you. I faced her calmly, without the slightest fear. Go ahead. When a worker's basic rights aren't protected, that contract is invalid by default. I'm ready to go to court anytime. Naturally, To Man Y lost the lawsuit. She could only watch as my V Minh Hien grew more popular by the day. While her own tea house fell into a dying state, revenue unable to cover expenses. Dragged back into the same vicious cycle from years ago, debt, collapse, and despair. With nowhere to vent her rage, she turned on Duong Tuyet. You followed Hứa Minh Vi for so long and learned nothing at all? You're useless. I never should have relied on someone like you. At first, Duong Tuyet nodded and endured it, but eventually she exploded. Then why didn't you keep Hứa Minh Vi back then? She carried the entire tea house every single day. Did you ever praise her even once? Now that she's gone, you finally know how valuable she was? It's too late. She sneered. Honestly, take a look at yourself. No real ability, always putting on airs. You want others to work like beasts, but you're unwilling to give anything in return. Greedy and obsessed with face. This is exactly what you deserve. That was the final straw. To Man Y completely lost her mind. The two of them started fighting right there in the tea house. Teacups shattered everywhere. Antique tea sets I had personally sourced, old, rare pieces, were smashed and soaked. Ruined beyond repair, the entire place turned into a battlefield. With no way out, To Man Y began borrowing money everywhere, even falling into online loan traps, desperately trying to revive the brand. She hired a new store manager, hoping to start over, but before she could even feel relieved, she returned the next day to find that Duong Tuyet had emptied the account and vanished. The new manager never showed up. To Man Y collapsed onto the shop floor, crying hysterically. One false eyelash hung loose. Lipstick smeared. Foundation streaked across her face. There was no trace left of the elegant tea house owner she once pretended to be. All that remained was the pitiful sight of someone who had lifted herself too high, now fallen. With no one left to help her up. And even then, all her resentment was still directed at me. One day, while I was sourcing ingredients for an upcoming festival batch, the tea house called me in panic. Director Hua, someone came to smash the place. I immediately turned the car around. When I arrived, the shop was in ruins. Premium tea sets, incense burners, aroma diffusers, everything shattered across the floor. Boxes of dried tea leaves were dumped everywhere, soaked, emitting a strange stench. Some employees were sobbing in the corner. The customers were shaken. Fortunately, the staff had been quick-witted enough to hide the most precious teas in time. Otherwise, my shop would have been completely finished that day. They told me at least 5 people had stormed in. The leader was a burly man with a vicious glare that terrified everyone at first sight. The moment I heard it, I knew who it was. To Man Y's, mentally unstable, younger brother. I called the police immediately. They arrived quickly and arrested all of them. At first, I thought the man really was mentally ill and would only get a warning at most. To my surprise, the police said he wasn't sick at all, he just used that excuse to intimidate people more easily. I laughed out loud. Perfect, this time, he was going to jail for real. It didn't take long for him to confess. To Man Y had hired him to carry out the vandalism. As a result, she not only went to prison, but also had to compensate for all the damages. Her name became toxic throughout the tea industry. No one dared to cooperate with her or even associate with her anymore. Even the landlord stepped in and bluntly kicked her out. If you keep running a tea house here, you'll bring bad luck to the entire street. My place is clean. I don't house people like you. Her son was so ashamed that he left home entirely and moved to another province. To repay her debts, to Man Y was forced to sell her house and scrape by doing odd jobs. But she was already old and in poor health, so she could only find temporary work no one wanted. The last time I saw her, she was hunched over on the street, picking up plastic bottles. The gray coat of makeup she once wore was gone. No lipstick, no elegance, no refined smile. She was just an ordinary old woman now, silent, worn down, exactly as she had always been beneath the surface. But none of that had anything to do with me anymore. Later, Lam Wei also left the old tea house and joined Vi Min Heen, becoming my operations manager, my most trusted right hand. Our lives were filled with light. Many years later, on a drizzly afternoon in a narrow alley behind Bin Tay Market, I saw her again by chance. An elderly woman with disheveled white hair, wearing a worn-out raincoat, bent over as she picked up plastic bottles scattered along the roadside. Her hands trembled, a soaked plastic bag clung to her body. She looked up, and our eyes met. Time seemed to stop. She recognized me. I recognized her. No heavy makeup. No fake gentle smile. No luxurious silk kipao. Only a tired old woman, her eyes clouded by years of resentment and regret. She looked at me, her lips trembling as if she wanted to say something, but in the end, she lowered her head and continued picking up bottles. I stood there for a long time. It wasn't that I had nothing to say. I could have walked over. I could have asked if she was healthy, if she had a place to stay, if she needed help. But I didn't. Not because I still hated her. And not because I wanted her to suffer. Simply because there was no longer any place for her in my life. I turned and walked away under the light rain. Behind me, the clinking sound of plastic bottles gradually faded into the distance. That was the last time I ever saw Man Y. Later, I heard she lived alone in a cramped rental room. No children by her side. No visitors. Her son had cut off contact long ago. The people who once worked for her, once flattered her, no one even remembered her name anymore. She lived on, but no longer as a tea house owner. Just an ordinary person, silent, lonely, exactly the kind of person she once despised the most. And I felt neither joy nor pity. Only relief. Because in the end, life itself answered everything for me. No one can stand on top of others forever without paying the price. That's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please like the video, subscribe to China Story Tales, and stay tuned for more stories.